Brian Lehrer on WNYC. So we just had a health conversation in our weekly Tuesday health and climate section of the show. This week we're doing both. So on to a local climate-related story. When people talk about flooding in New York City, they tend to think of the shoreline, but some of the neighborhoods that are hardest hit by heavy rainstorms are actually located in landlocked communities, like some in Queens, where several residential neighborhoods like Hollis and Casino Park, Flushing, were essentially built on a swamp. After the July 31st storm brought yet another round of flooding to the area, the city's been scrambling to figure out how to protect these neighborhoods as we enter peak hurricane season. And as many of you know, these issues about flooding and sewage backup are nothing new in Queens. But right now, the city's Department of Environmental Protection is surveying residents in some of the most vulnerable neighborhoods in Queens about whether they'd be interested in buyouts. That's one solution, meaning homeowners could sell their homes to the city and leave the sinking neighborhoods altogether. The buyout plan is just a potential right now, but after years of dealing with chronic devastating floods, there seems to be substantial interest from homeowners compared to the past. There are also some shorter-term, so-called common sense initiatives that are kicking into gear. And so joining us now is Queens Borough President Donovan Richards, who recently announced he'd be bolstering signage in the area to warn drivers as well as residents before flooding begins. Plus, he's got plans to make some new infrastructure investments to mitigate the inevitable flooding damage. We will also talk to him about some controversial things that he said recently about city politics in general. But Borough President Richards, always good to have you on the show. Thanks so much for coming back on WNYC.
Always great to be with you, Brian. Always great to be with you.
You want to call out the particularly hard-hit neighborhoods? I mentioned Hollis and Casino Park, which is sort of in, a part of Flushing that leans toward Murray Hill, Auburndale, around there. But it's not just there, right?
Yeah, it's not an easy issue to address. Our infrastructure has long been underinvested in, but I'm proud of the work we've done in Southeast Queens. Almost $2.7 billion, and I'm the first Black man to ever chair the Environmental Protection Committee. So when I met with the commissioner back then, I said, show me where you're spending your money. And we had 40 projects on the books in Southeast Queens. And where that money has been spent, when I wake up in the morning, I'm no longer like, oh, it is Rosedale or certain parts of Southeast Queens that are Rockaways, are they being flooded? It's not them. So now we've moved to Rego Park, Flushing, Hollis, which is a very low-lying area, and we just have work to do, and I think buyouts may be a sound solution.
I grew up not far from Casino Park, and I used to go ice skating in the pond there as a kid. I don't know if it freezes over for much of the winter anymore.
Oh, no, it doesn't. And, that's the impacts of climate change. We're seeing much more weather events. And no matter how much sewers you put in, right, we can update the sewer system. But the sewer system can't hold this amount of water in these extreme weather events. So we have a lot of work to do. Doesn't mean we don't expand the sewer system, but there are a lot of challenges around, and it's whack-a-mole. When I wake up in the morning, I'm like, I don't sleep when we see these weather events come because we don't know where they're gonna hit.
And this has been going on for years. Maybe some of our listeners who either were or weren't in those neighborhoods remember there were multiple drowning deaths in basement apartments. Yes. After Hurricane Ida in 2021. There was a family of 3, a mother and her son. And it didn't start with Ida even, or all the way back to Sandy, 2012. It's been pretty bad for decades at that point. Why is that? Is it just a global warming, climate change issue, or is the sewage system in parts of Queens, insufficient and always was? Take us to the roots of this.
So even in Hollis, for instance, where we saw the drownings in the basement, the mother and the son, there are infrastructure projects happening there. So there's a substantial amount of dollars being poured into infrastructure in Southeast Queens. But the bottom line is we got to figure out, and, it's been a political point, right, where we talk about legalizing basements, right? And what incentives are there to make sure that basements are safe? Um, the bottom line is we have work to continue to do, but these are really low-lying areas, Brian. We have to entertain buyouts in some of these areas and look at blue belt solutions and look at other solutions. Permeable paving is another one, but we are just seeing extreme challenges, and this is climate change, right? In Atlanta, we are going to see in New York City just as many 90-degree days as Atlanta, and that's problematic.
Mm-hmm.
Our weather is becoming subtropical, right? So we are in a danger zone, and like I said, I can't sleep when I know we're going to have rain.
So, are you for the buyouts as a major solution? Talk about that and your own relationship to it.
I think in certain low-lying areas, there's no exception. I think that we don't really have a choice. And we've spoken to residents and said, you may want to consider buyouts here because this is going to happen over and over again. You think about the rainstorm just last week, and people who were just rebuilding their basements or have to rebuild their basements again. So it becomes a psychological issue, a mental health issue as well, where these families are really working families. They don't; these are not millionaires. Every time it rains, they have to think about what are the consequences of the rain that's coming down. So I have encouraged the city to start the conversation around buyouts. I used to represent the Rockaways.
Yep.
I mean, I still represent the Rockaways, but as the local city council member, one of the things we did is we did buyout and we moved people further inland. If you chose to, we can't force you. But the bottom line is that I think we do need to encourage people to think about the buyouts and return that land back to parkland.
Anybody in affected areas of Queens listening right now and want to call in on the flooding problem generally, as apparently it's getting more widespread as there are more heavy rain events, as the climate gets warmer around here, or anyone else for Queensborough President Donovan Richards, anybody interested in a buyout and returning the land under your house? Guess the house would come down, right? If it's being returned to
The land would
parkland.
come down, and what I did in the Rockaways, Brian, is I rezoned those areas so there's no development that's going to happen on that land.
Two one two
And
433 WNYC 212-433-9692. Call or text or anything else relevant to Queensborough President Donovan Richards. Is it just I think about different areas of the city, and I think, God, those parts of Queens, some of which I'm personally familiar with, are they're not the only low-lying areas in the city, as low-lying as they are they? Why would it just be there, or primarily? Because we always hear about this as a Queens issue.
well, I represent Queens, so I'm not, go talk to the Manhattan Borough President on his issues. But we know Manhattan, many low-lying areas in the Bronx, Southeast Queens, Brooklyn
Yeah.
as well, Canarsie. We all have the same issue. And there's no sewer system that's going to really address this issue because when you have this frequent rain with this intensity, you really can't. I don't care how great your sewer system is. It's hit or miss based on the wind direction, based on the amount of the rainfalls. And, like I said, as the former environmental protection chairman,
Yeah.
I'm very versed on this issue. But I do know the only way to resolve the climate crisis is to address environmental injustice, right? So you got to address these Black and brown communities who've historically been disinvested in. And it's one of the reasons under the de Blasio administration, I worked very hard to secure almost 2.7 billion now. Eric Adams added on to it. The Mayor Mamdani has added on to it by making sure that our catch basins are flushed a little bit more. But there does need to be an investigation, and this is one of the things we're going to call on, because we've said to DEP, flush this catch basin, and then these reports get closed out as if they've done the work and they haven't done the work. So that's work you're going to hear a little bit more about in the days to come.
And Anita in Springfield Gardens, Queens, you're on WNYC. Hello.
Hi, good morning, Borough President.
Good morning.
This is actually Anita calling from Laurelton, Queens, which is next to Springfield Gardens, as you know, a.k.a. Judy Rivera's daughter, just so you have context.
Judy Rivera.
So, I mean, we know, as you well know, being a son of Laurelton and all those areas, that this is a decades-long problem. I mean, back to when I was in junior high school, going to, 231, there were flooding issues, the buses, walking was an issue. But I want to bring to your attention an issue that my block association has been dealing with. There are increasing issues on blocks that have never experienced this in the past. The drainage and the sewers in those areas far from the problems are now experiencing water that's become standing water for months, and it attracts, of course, everything in the summer, mosquitoes and everything. And in the winter, it freezes over. I have started referring them to Lake whatever, because that's how big it is. And I just see the problem increasing and increasing. And it's just, you're right, global warming is just increasing these storms that are, out of the norm. It's probably the new norm
Anita,
now.
what would you most like to see done?
Well, we have a specific problem that, like, when DOT, when there's paving and repaving and construction and streets are broken up by Con Ed or National Grid, they have to take these conditions into consideration. And part of our problem was caused by a simple, the pitching of the street, the paving, the height to the sidewalks. There has to be conversations across agencies on how to address this, so you're not creating more problems to areas. So I just wanted to share that.
Anita, thank you very much. Let me get one more in here, and then you can respond to both of them. Let's see. How about Alex in Middle Village? You're on WNYC. Hi, Alex.
Yes, good morning, Brian. Good morning, Borough President. My name is Alex Shurian, and I'm calling finally to some representative. I live in Middle Village, and we had some flooding, I would say, over with skipping quite a few years in between up until Ida. But particularly after Ida, and in the particularly the last few years, with any rain with that intensity, we have that constant basement floodings that we're getting from the communal driveway. And the issue for that is because the communal driveway, unfortunately, only on our block is the stormwater is going to dry well, while adjacent adjacent streets, they have it many years ago. They hooked it up to the city sewer system. They don't.
And Alex, I'm going to jump in and just ask you to get to what you would like the city to do, if anything in particular,
yes,
about this problem.
Yes. Our request is from actually from our block to connect our communal driveway to the city system, because as I'm mentioning, the adjacent streets, they have the same topography conditions, but they don't have the flooding issue. Only on our particular block, we have that issue, which is a dry well.
Borough President, briefly to Alex's issue. It sounds like it's a very local issue, but
on the communal driveway, it's just a challenge. I tried to pass legislation back in 2015, even on the sanitation issues around the communal driveways, but they're considered private, so that's hard there. On the Springfield Gardens issue, what I would say is send me the location, because Southeast Queens had 40 projects on the books that were underfunded mandates. And as the environmental protection chairman, I was able to secure $2.7 billion, over $2 billion, to finally address the issues in Southeast Queens. So it's going to take a little time, right? But they're getting through. I think out of the 40 projects that were underfunded mandates, we're at like number 22. So your block may be included in that. And in Springfield Gardens, actually, we did I want to say almost a $50 million project, which was the Blue Belt within Springfield Park, which definitely reduced flooding within the neighborhood. But if your block is still seeing that, I need to know that. So, Brian, if you can send her my information. And my email is donrichards@queensbp.nyc.gov. donrichards@queensbp.nyc.gov. So if you're still experiencing that, I just need to know the block, because there may be funding already to address the issue. So send me an email and we'll address.
Good. Thank you very much. Now you're going to get flooded because you gave, so to speak, because you gave that email address on the air.
That's why I got 100 staffers.
We have to go through. Good. We have 5 minutes left in the segment. This might sound a little off topic, but maybe some of the broader politic is relevant. In July, you made posted a post referring to the Democratic Socialists of America as perpetuating white supremacy. I know that was more of an attack on the national DSA rather than the New York City chapter, but it's pretty rare for a borough president to make such a directly negative statement, and to that degree, about the group that helped put the mayor in office and that he identifies with. Can you lay out that argument for our listeners very briefly, and do you stand by that today?
Oh, I absolutely stand by it. Political colonialism is what I call it. And, once again, I am great with the mayor. The mayor and I have a solid relationship. I can pick up the phone and text and call him anytime. But that doesn't negate the fact that we're seeing political colonialism happening in our communities. And the bottom line is, where you see the gentrification lines, that's where the DSA thrives. They're not in Southeast Queens, right, or Central Brooklyn winning these races. And I'm not against them. The bottom line is, I have great relationships with some of our DSA colleagues who call me for endorsements, who work with us as well. So this is not a political attack on them. My premise is, I got an issue when you're a multimillionaire, or you come from a multimillionaire family, and you are trying to talk about working families. You don't know what that experience is. I know what that feeling is, sleeping on a mattress for a large majority of my life. I know what that feeling is of sleeping on my friend's couch because I couldn't find affordable housing. So the bottom line is that we can agree on childcare. I agree on Medicare for all with them. This is not a battle on
So what do you
like
disagree?
policy.
So what do you disagree on? Because if you're talking about white supremacy and political colonialism, usually phrases like that are aimed at people who are coming in and trying to take over for their own selfish means, which I don't even think you're accusing them of.
Oh no, that's not true. I am accusing him of that. It is the truth. And when you look at many of the districts that have taken out genuine elected officials like Antonio Reynoso, who is genuinely from Bushwick and really has done the work. And that's where my division comes with them because you can't take out the indigenous people and act as if they are and they always using these phrases, right? APAC or whatever it is know anything about Antonio Reynoso or Congresswoman Velasquez, right? Who's done the work to pave the way for the progressive movement. And by the way, I was the Progressive Caucus co-chair of the
Yes.
city council with
Right,
Antonio.
with Reynoso
So
in the city
we
council.
did
But Claire
done the
Valdez,
work,
who's a
right?
DSA candidate who beat Reynoso in the primary for that congressional seat, is there something that she's advocating that you think is against the interest of the community? Because I'm not sure I'm hearing it.
Listen, I will say that we can agree 99%, but just because you move into a community and you're giving great talking points doesn't mean you've done the work. And there are people with indigenous people who did not have a silver spoon, who didn't move here from Texas, who really have done this work. And I find issue with some of these individuals the districts and talking down to us. Like I just have to take premise with it. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm here because my friend was murdered. I never thought of growing up in politics. I was a failed almost high school student, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had friends who didn't make it. Like, listen, I was talking to a civic who stepped up in my district. And he was saying it's amazing how we used to get on the bus with the killer of Jam Master Jay. And then it's you're the borough president, right? And I got to
Mm-hmm.
school, right? This is real life for us. We don't
Right.
cosplay who
Coming
we
out of
are
that
from the neighborhoods we come from. So
kind of life
that's
experience.
just my issue. It's like even with Gustavo, like all of these stories being written about him. You know, you got a $1.5 million home.
Gustavo
We don't
Gordillo,
co-
the co-chair
we
of
don't come
NYC
from that.
DSA.
Our parents don't have any money, Brian. Like we lucky if we had
Yep.
$5, right? So that's just my
Real,
issue is just
I
be
hear you.
honest with who you are.
Real quick, we're almost out of time. Related issue. Do you have an opinion on the city-run grocery stores plan? It would be one for each borough, as you know. A site for Queens hasn't been named yet. A group of businesses just filed a lawsuit against it, claiming it would discriminate against Latino and Asian American small business owners. Do you have a position on that Mamdani
Yeah,
initiative?
I think there's room for everybody. In all honesty, I think the mayor's doing the right thing. I am working with the administration on some Queen sites. And I've identified and will be working in the days to come. But where I'm from, even where I lived in Far Rockaway, we didn't have supermarkets, right? We had bodegas. What I do think the administration should do is look at the Fresh Initiative, which is something I expanded as the zoning chairman as a city council. Um, Ended it into at least 7 districts. And now the community I lived in now has 7. I mean, we have 2 supermarkets that are opening. So we're resolving the food access, food insecurity, food affordability issue there. So what I would suggest the administration do is really look at the fresh program, make it professional, ramp up the staffing in it, give incentives so when we're doing affordable housing, you can incentivize supermarkets to be built in these affordable housing developments. So that's what I would suggest the administration does. But I have no issue with you making, Mayor Mamdani making supermarkets more affordable.
Queens Borough President Donovan Richards, thank you so much. The president of Queens, we really appreciate your time.
Queens get the money.